Welcome back to Joe's Toolbox Exchange. This has been one of our most requested videos, and that is going to be a review of the US General Series by Harbor Freight. It's going to be a little bit of a different video because usually we look at just one box or maybe two boxes in comparison to each other. At most, I think we've done three. This is quite a bit more than that, and I don't want to spend that much time mentioning every single spec for all these boxes. So what we're going to do this time is we're going to kind of go over them, and at the bottom we're just going to, on text, throw in the specifications like list price, dimensions, and weight rating and things like that, instead of verbally mentioning it for every single box individually. This is also a little bit unique because these are all Series 3 boxes, but they are every size of the US General they currently have, from the 72 triple all the way down to the 27 single bank. And then you also have the 42s and then the 56s. So there is a large variety here along with a top box. They are all going to be green with black trim. And these boxes are also all new, so you're not going to see a lot of wear, and that is one of my biggest complaints with some of the US General boxes. Under heavy use, they do give out a lot easier than some of these more expensive boxes. That being said, I know a lot of people want me to say that these boxes are a better value than a Snap-on, and a lot of people also want me to say that they're not a good value and you shouldn't buy them. I don't really think this is true. I love Snap-on, Mac, Matco, Cornwell, but I like all tools and I like all brands, and I think they all have a place. The US General is a really good option for the price. You know, the most expensive being $1,800. The triple here is a far cry from what you would get a triple from any of the tool trucks. I don't think the quality is that of a tool truck, and I think that's where it's a little bit tricky. I think when you're talking about toolboxes or talking about anything really, I think one of my biggest complaints is when you look at these boxes online or on their website, they do try to have a direct comparison to Snap-on, and I think that is a little bit misleading. You know, I don't have anything wrong with Chevys. I own one. I like Chevy, but also I wouldn't compare it to a McLaren just because they both have four wheels and they both drive on the road. I don't think that they're comparable because they're under the same umbrella of a vehicle. And I think that is my biggest complaint with US General. I wish they didn't compare them to Snap-on. I don't think they are comparable to Snap-on. I also don't think they should be. You know, at a tenth of the price or a fifth of the price, it's still a very good value. I just think a lot of people want to argue with me online, or people when we're selling these boxes, they want to say, well, I could just buy one from Harbor Freight, and that is fine. You know, this is going to be a triple Snap-on Classic Series, which is kind of there's a Heritage which is below it, but for the most part, this is going to be the lowest end Snap-on box that I would consider a professional quality, and it's just extremely smooth. All the drawers are extremely precise. Everything is balanced very well. They hold up extremely well in heavy use. Even after a decade, the Classic Series usually has very few issues. The slides hold up, the wheels hold up, the paint is very high quality. On the US General, I get these in a lot on trade. I don't show these a lot in our videos. We sell a surprising amount of US Generals because they come in on trade. A mechanic will start out and he'll buy one of these, which I think is perfect. Rather than going into a huge amount of debt for something like a Snap-on Epic, you can get one of these boxes and work out of it for several years, and then down the road trade it. Most tool trucks will take them on trade, or you can trade them to someone like me, or just sell them on Marketplace because they sell very fast on Marketplace because the price is much less. So it's easier to justify $500 or $600 on a used box. Comparing it to a used Snap-on like this one is still going to be pushing $4 grand. So when they come in, they're usually not here for very long. I would be shocked if these boxes are still in here in 2 weeks, and this box probably will be here in 2 weeks. I think that's pretty much, I don't want to harp too much on Harbor Freight. I like a lot of the stuff they make. A lot of their stuff is a really good value, and I think these are a really good value. I think if you're in the price range thinking, should I buy a Snap-on slide top cart for $3,500 or, you know, $2,800, or should I finance it? Or you're like, maybe you can just get a double bank and you can just work out of this for the time being. I would say just go to the double bank. If that's what you can afford, that's probably the best bet, and then get the use out of it. These are all going to be the same, like I said, Series 3. There is some a little bit differences between them in the quality. This right here, I'm going to use a tape measure as I go through because I really do not want to mispronounce these boxes. Dimensions, I am a little bit less familiar with the US Generals just because we don't sell them quite as often as a Snap-on, and I usually don't spend that much time learning about them because frankly I don't have to. They just sell themselves because of the price being so low. But I believe this is going to be their 42-inch. This is their 42-inch box, and then there's a side cab here. That box also has a side cab. I think their side cabs are 17 inches. Sorry, like I said, still learning. So they're about 14 inches, maybe 14 and a half, and then their side boxes are going to be 6 drawers. All their boxes are going to have pretty much the same slide on all of them. If you want to come show this, they're a lot harder to open. It's the same mechanism as that is in the Classic series or a Master series, which is these slide latches. But if you just look how easy it is to move it, I mean, you just barely bump it. It's extremely precise on the snap-on. You can just barely, you know, bump it, the drawers will come open, but also the drawers will never come open on their own. The US General is a bit harder, you know, you have to really move these to get them to engage. And then even after it's fully disengaged, it just takes a lot more oomph to get the drawer to open. For the price, it's not a complaint, it's just something to mention. A lot of people say when they're looking for a box, they're looking to upgrade a US General, and I talk about the Classic series and the Master series, and they say they do not like the slides or the little slide latch maneuver. And I understand, although I will say it's a bigger issue on a less expensive box. You know, on a Snap-on, it's very intuitive. You just bump the drawer and it comes open. On a US General, you are fighting them a little bit more to have them release from that mechanism. Moving on to here, this is going to be the 42-inch. It's a double bank still. It's just a little bit smaller of a double bank, and I think that's something that Harbor Freight did do a good job of, is offering such a large variety of these boxes, and they are all on the same platform, so you can put quite a few of them together. All of these boxes were put together in a row. They all came from Tony Kanaan. We've done some videos with him, and he's going a different direction, which is why they're currently here at our shop. These are what his stickers are. That's the stickers that are on the box. He never used them. So as you can see, they might have, you know, a little bit of dust or something in the drawers, but they are all brand new. I do like that the trim on top of these goes all the way over the top. It reminds me of the 2S series and the 4S series, most notably the 2S. It is very similar to that by Matco. It gives a full rollover of aluminum where the Snap-on is just bare metal on the top. I'm not a huge fan of this because you get a lot of wear on this top part. If you drop something and your drawer is open, you know, a lot of times it's just going to leave a ding in the top of it. Where on these, if you get that ding, you can just replace this top piece of, man, they are hard to open. Release that top little trim here, and then you could replace this piece if it became that big of an issue. I think it gives it a little bit of a nicer look. I don't think those come in very many colors. I'm not positive how many colors these trim come in. I think right now they're just black and chrome. I don't think they come in any other, and if they do, I have never seen it. Where Snap-on, Matco, these other brands have a much larger variety of trim colors. It's going to be like the Classic also, where there is no trim pieces on the edge, where if a Master series or a lot of higher end brands like the Success are going to have trim on the edges to give it a little bit more protection. If you damage this, you can replace it. That is the most worn out part on a box, because if you're moving it around, you're going to ding it into things. And these are just a rollover. A lot of boxes use that though. If you want to look down this row, that green and black box down there is going to be a 4S, and it is the same thing. It's just a rollover, and then that 2S that's blue next to it, or sorry, the Classic next to it that's blue is going to be the same thing, just the rollover. The drawers on them feel pretty decent once they open. When they're under a lot of weight, they are a bit harder to move, where with the Classic series, when they're fully loaded, they just feel pretty smooth. The wobble is something a lot of people come to look at when they open any box. I don't know why that's inherently what everybody does. It's like kicking the tires on a used vehicle. It's just what people do, and that's fine. But when you open a box all the way, you'll just see the wobble is quite significant. I don't really know why that matters to most people. When you have a box fully loaded and you are shutting it, it is a little bit frustrating because it'll do this. It'll walk on you when you push it in, you know, it'll do this all the way in. Although on a lot of boxes you see a similar amount of wobble. I mean, the Classic here isn't far off from that. I mean, it's about the same. The Epics have the least amount of wobble in my experience, and then anytime you double slide a drawer, you lose quite a bit of that wobble. It's much more secure. And the same thing is going to be on a US General. When you have them double slid, there's really not that much wobble. This is going to be a 42 with a top box. They do have top boxes for all the sizes. I don't think they have one for the 27 though. It's gas strut, the same as most top boxes. It has a little rubber bumper here to protect it from wear. The struts are pretty far out of the way. It has a grommet in the back if you wanted to run power so you could charge things in the top of it. It is pretty tall though, so Unless you're like 6 foot plus, it's going to be a little bit hard to have all your chargers up there. And once again, there's his 66 on the inside of the box, along with his little sticker. And the tiny fat Tony here. Some of these boxes have them. I left them on. I think they're cool. If you buy these boxes, I could take them off if you don't like it, but I'd leave them. Yeah, there's another sticker in there. But these bolt together similar to a classic, so it's pretty solid. Most of the boxes are any box these days are going to have holes in the top. That's what it's for. So you can interface a top and bottom together and move it around without fear of it coming apart on you. The locks on them are decent. For what they are, they're decent. They're a full turnover, so you're going to go a 180 degrees, unlike a snap-on where it's a 90-degree turn to lock and unlock. I think anytime that you use a 180, it's a lot smoother of a mechanism because you're not trying to move as much metal in such a small amount of turn. Mac uses a 180-degree lock turn, and I think it also feels the smoothest of all of the brands is going to be the Maximizer locks, in my opinion. They are just cheap, if I can find a good example. If you want to look at just the gauging on the locks themselves, it's a little bit hard to describe. These are just pretty thin, and they're just a little plastic key. But at the end of the day, Harbor Freight sells replacement locks, and they're pretty cost effective. You can also get matching cylinders, same as all the brands. So this one is not matching because he just bought all these off the floor, so none of them are going to have the same cylinder in them. But you can buy a replacement cylinder. So, I mean, worst case, your lock does wear out. It's really not that big of a deal. It's just one small complaint that I have. We're going to move on to the 73 now. Or 72. I think these are actually 72, which is a bit strange. Most boxes are going to be closer to 73. So this is actually like 71 and 5/8. They probably call it a 72 online. And this box does have power. So this is where I really think the value starts to hit well. I think this one's like 1,800. And that's a really solid box for the price. I really don't have any complaints, and Harbor Freight does offer sales on their products, so sometimes they have 20% off coupons. So if you really start looking at it this way, like, I don't know if you can buy a better box from any other big box store or tool truck that is going to be a comparable product to this for that price. And it has a power drawer. The power drawer is absolutely tiny, though. This is really small. I mean, maybe you have 2 Milwaukee chargers in here. It has the slots for a lot of chargers. I think it's 5, and then the USB and the micro, or the USB-C, sorry, that's going to be here, which I do like. It's a good addition. Everything is USB-C now. But I just don't see in what scenario you're able to fit that many chargers. Maybe if some of them are small, like you're using lights or something like that, or just charging like the cells for a Streamlight, maybe this would work, but it's just small compared to what you're going to see inside of a Classic Series. So this is the Classic Series power drawer. The US General power drawer from edge to edge is going to be 11 inches. Now that's what I'm including, 11 inches, because it's from the wall to the bottom of the charging dock here. So you have about 11 inches of space, where the Snap-on, they actually boost their chargers up so you can use the space underneath it. And this one is 14 inches. So you get a lot of extra space, you know, from 10 to 14. I think you can fit a bit more in here. I've used these boxes personally and can easily fit 3 or 4 chargers in there. I don't think I could put 3 chargers in there. Maybe if you positioned them just right. And then also the drawer below is going to be your power drawer rack. And that is a good addition. It is a direct rip of the Snap-on one. It is almost identical in appearance and functionality. If you want to come look at this one, this is the newer version of Snap-on, so it doesn't have the walls, but at one point they did have the walls, the same as that one, where it would interface that way, and then your impact guns fit in here and they move up and down. I think it's a good addition, and for a box at this price, it's a pretty cool feature. The back actually does hang, or can hang on the back lip. Theirs cannot. And then there's no anything beyond that. There isn't, you know, there's not going to be speed drawers, power lighted tops, or things like this. This is pretty much it. All of the drawers are the same, and I think this is probably the best bet. I think if you're looking for a new box and you're under a budget of $2,000, I don't think you could go wrong with the box like this. This is less expensive than a Snap-on a flip top 40-inch cart. So, you know, a 40-inch flip top or this. I don't know. If trying to get the most space for the dollar is your concern, I wouldn't hesitate to buy one of these. If having a product that you're going to use for 30 years is a concern, or even 10 years, maybe this wouldn't be what I would buy. And if you work out of them every single day, you guys have US Generals and you guys have US Generals in the shop and you know what they look like after time. That being said, the argument that people make the most to me is, well, I can replace this box, you know, every 5 or 10 years and do that for the life of my career and still be under the price of a Snap-on. I think that's one thing that's missed there, though, is the amount of time it takes to do this is a huge ordeal. You know, you're going to have a weekend or more wrapped up of your life trying to move all the things apart, and that's at the point you replace it. So, you know, if the box is starting to have some slide issues, the wheels are starting to not feel as good, are you replacing it every single time that you have an issue, or are you replacing slides? I'm not trying to say it's not a good buy. I'm just saying that is something to consider. When you look at a Snap-on Classic, you know it's pretty much going to be what it is going to be forever. It's not going to have many issues. I'm not, on the Series 2, I saw more issues with the paint. Maybe these haven't been out long enough that I see issues with the Series 3 with rusting on the paint. The paint is good for what it is. The fit and finish on these is really good. The way that everything is put together. They don't weigh very much, and I think that's just because there isn't quite as much structure inside of the box. When you take apart a Snap-on, all the drawers out, there's like a honeycomb pattern inside of it, and then double false walls, and then a pretty thick steel bottom. We moved a 36 Epic, which loaded into a trailer today, and that weighed, or was at least significantly harder to move than one of these, even with the really large casters on the Epics. I'm going to cut in here real quick to actually talk a little bit more about the weight of this box. This box weighs 490 pounds, and on the website they compare it to a Snap-on KCP 2423, and that box weighs 625 pounds. So there really is a significance in the weight difference between the two. It's about 30% for the boxes of the same size. And I think that's definitely reflected in when you move it across the shop, you can just tell that there is a lot less steel inside of it. And also look how cool the shop looks with the new Govee lights in it. While we're talking about the casters, if you want to look at these two, these are both going to be Series 3, but look at the wheels on this one. This looks exactly like the Snap-on casters that were on the original Master Series dating back to the 90 with your large spring in here. I do like that the spring is painted. On the Snap-ons, they were not, and you always saw corrosion in here. It's a clean look with everything being blacked out. But the wheels over here are way smaller, and these are going to be a rubber, and these are going to be a plastic. So these are very similar to a Master wheel, and these are very similar to a Classic wheel, but they're under the same series of being a Series 3, which is a bit different to see, and I'm guessing it's because these are taking a lot higher weight rating, and the fail point of almost any toolbox is going to be the casters. If you're looking at an Epic, a Classic, a Masters, a 2S, a 4S, the weight rating for the casters is always what's going to limit the amount of weight in the box. The drawers will sometimes limit it also. You know, the box may be rated for 15,000 pounds, but the drawers can't hold 15,000 pounds, so it's kind of a moot point. But on these, it is definitely the casters. So as you move down to the 54, but I don't want to misspeak, 57, once again. So we have a 57-inch here. It's going to be quite a bit bigger than the 42, but if you can see, they're really pretty similar in appearance. So if you're shopping for one of these, that's definitely something I would keep in mind, that there is, you know, if you're looking at one of these used, they look super similar. I run into the same issue when I sell Classics because there are quite a few different options, and same with the Master Series for Snap-on, different options, and sometimes people come and don't realize they're buying a smaller one because they look very similar in photos, especially when it's just on, you know, a background of a garage door with nothing to compare it to. It's hard to tell that maybe they are a bit different. This one does have a power drawer. So this box here and this box there, the drawers are interchangeable. You could take the power drawer and the holster rack drawer and you could swap them with these. The rest of them are not. Actually, the center ones are. But you can see the wheels, once again, you're going back to a Classic Series wheel. That's a non-suspension based caster. And they're just not quite as nice as the suspension casters that they have on the 73. The drawer's pretty much the exact same as the one here. Overall build quality, the exact same. It's just a slightly smaller version. They're all going to use the same handles, same locks, and they're going to recycle a lot of the components like slides. This is the exact same box that we looked at over there with the side cab. It's going to be a 42 with the side cab. It's a mirror of that box. They are the exact same with just the locker on a different side. Their lockers can go on either side. They just hang on, so you could put one on the left or right and then interface them together through the bolt holes. And then this is the smallest one. I don't see these very often. This is probably one of the least common US Generals that we have here in the shop, and they are 27 inches. This is the only one out of all of these that have any wear. It's got a little bit of a rub mark right here, and we'll probably try to clean that up a bit before we list it, but I would like to mention it now. And it's going to have the exact same drawer trim and everything else. These are really cool. I think if you had like a little diag cart, they would work really well. I like that the top drawer is deep. On a lot of boxes, when you have a smaller box, if you want to turn around and look at this maximizer, for example, they're going to load the top with these skinny drawers. I'm not a huge fan of that. And if you want to come over here and look at this Epic, this blue snap-on Epic, you see how the top drawers are just really narrow. A lot of time on these single bank boxes, they are just narrow on the top, and it's kind of a complaint because that's going to be your socket drawer. So when you're looking at a box like this, if you were using this, this is the box that you had as a homeowner, you'd put all of your tools in here. It's nice to be able to have this top drawer where you could put sockets. It is still a single slid drawer, and I think that is something US General probably missed the mark on. I wish they would have given you the option to move drawers around a little bit easier. The way that Snap-on does it is they put, if you look at a Snap-on box, every single drawer, you could have this entire box be these skinny drawers. So because of that, on the inside of these walls, if you want to come over here and look, there's a slot to put a slide, and then any drawer that is physically big enough to take a second slide can. And I wish US General did that. It really doesn't add that much expense to the manufacturing process, but it would give you a lot more versatility when you're looking at them going, okay, maybe this is going to be my standalone box, but this is just not too heavy on the top drawer. I mean, you can just see the push down. It's just not the strongest. Throughout this video, I did neglect to mention the weight rating on these boxes for the slides. Online, some of the boxes do mention specifically what the weight rating for the slide is, and on some boxes they do not. But they are 120 pounds, and I believe it is universal across all of the Series 3, even the side boxes and the larger 73, because they appear to be the same format and part number on the slides themselves. I just wish that the top drawer either came from the factory with double slides or at least gave us the option to add a second set of slides. And that can be said about any of them. You know, you're going to have your top drawer on the bigger boxes double slid, but the rest of them, I lied. The bottom one is double slid. This one's going to be double slid and then single and single. And then this is also double, double, and single. And then on the side cabs, the bottom has a double, and this one probably does, and then the rest are all single. I just wish that you could at least add some second slides. And when you're talking about adding the second slides, it does also give you the option that you could reposition any drawer. So not only do you have the option to say, I want to maybe put my skinny drawer on the top, with a box like this, you can't do this. The way it comes is the way that it is going to be stuck forever. So after the video, I went back and actually took a little bit of time to look at this closer and take all of the drawers out of this box. I have put some of them back in. All of these boxes are going to be the exact same, so we're just going to be looking at this one for right now. But to verify that you cannot move the slides around, I don't really know how I missed this the first time, but you see these holes on the front. These are what integrate with the little latch on the side that prevents the drawer from coming open, and those are only in a fixed position. So I don't know what these extra slots are, and if you look down on the inside of the box, you can actually see there are a couple more of them. Anywhere there's not a slide, it's almost like there's a spot for another one, but even if you could somehow fit a slide in the back, which it looks like it does fit, in the front, the hole is not in the right position. There should be a hole here, and then also, even if you got the slide to work, there would be no way to have it work because there is not the little squares here in order for the latches to slide into. So if you look at a box like this, you know, there's the hole there and the hole there, and that's where the slide locks in, but there isn't one anywhere else. So you couldn't put skinny drawers over here for that reason. So while we're talking about that, this is what I'm referring to with the Snap-on having the option to move them all around, because where you have the slides now, you can move them up or down, or replace this deep drawer with a bunch of skinny ones, or you could add a second set of slide to the drawers to have them be a heavier weight rating on drawers that maybe have, more tooling or heavier tooling in them. And I think that is something that Harbor Freight will probably add, because it's a cheap solution or option to give more versatility to these boxes. And Harbor Freight is continually innovating. And I guess by innovating, I mean stealing ideas that other companies have already made and then reproducing them in China, which is just the name of the game. Up until this point, it looks like China has been able to pretty well replicate a lot of things that are designed here in the US, other than our economy and culture. Maybe someday they will figure out how to do that also. But for now, I think that would be a good addition to the US General, is to just add, a couple more grooves on the inside. It's not that expensive, and now you can make all of your drawers hold double the weight rating. You could have this drawer have 2 slides. It probably should have 2 slides. It's the same as the drawer below it. It just only has the single. But that is just something small. I think that maybe down the road they'll have a series 4 and they'll change some of these things. The height on them is pretty good. There's a couple variations in the box heights that you can see, but overall pretty similar. And the depth on them is all identical. So even on the smallest box to the deepest box, you're at 22 inches. And that really is, I think, the downfall of them being a heavy use professional grade box is the depth. 24 is shallow. We sell a lot of 24-inch deep boxes, and that's the biggest complaint. People outgrow them quickly because they're just small. If you're at home and you have a whole garage, I had a coworker at one point that always told me that his boxes were a better value than mine, and he had a whole wall of boxes in his garage, and I had at that point 2 Epics, and mine had significantly more storage, and that was what I could fit in my space at the time. If you're not limited in space and you can have 6 boxes in a row, then the 22-inch depth really isn't going to be an issue. But in a lot of your guys' shops, you have a bay or a designated area that you can work out of, and that's why I see people moving up to the 68 Epic. Less wall space to have the 68 Epic, so it's easier to fit it in a bay or a shop that you're really busy. So your boss, most people's bosses, isn't going to let them run 4 US Generals down a wall and take up multiple bays worth of wall space. So they're going to be allocated maybe 73 inches or 100 inches or something along the lines of this, which is where you see the importance of having a 29 or 30-inch deep box. That is where you talk about the Icon being 24 inches. That's a whole nother video, and I know they're coming out with a 29, I believe, or is it 30? I think it might be 30 or 31. I haven't looked that much into it, but the new Icon will be deeper. But currently what's offered is an Icon with 24 or a US General with 22. Both of these are just not that deep, and you will outgrow them a little bit quicker, because even though it only sounds like a few inches, it is actually a significant difference. So when you fully open a US General box, you're at about 19 inches, and when you fully open a Snap-on box, you're at about 21.5 inches. So on every single drawer, you're gaining, this much space, which is quite a lot when you think about adding that up across all of them. The locking mechanism is extremely similar to a Snap-on, only they use stainless hardware instead of Snap-on, which has basically the same thing. It's just going to be the painted metal. I guess Snap-on kind of is the flagship, so it's like, in my brain, I just always revert back to comparing it to Snap-on. I don't really want to say that they are comparable in any way, other than the fact that they're both toolboxes and they're both green in this case. A little bit different green. Snap-on's more lime. Theirs is a bit more mute. I actually like the US General Extreme Green more than I like the Snap-on. The Snap-on's almost obnoxious with how green it is. A lot of people love it. They call it Extreme Green. It's just extremely vibrant. I do like the US General Green. It's a little bit more toned down. It's not as extreme, but I think that they hit the nail on the head with the color, and I kind of like that they didn't have them be the same. You see a lot of people buying these boxes and then putting end cabs on it, and that drives me crazy when the colors are slightly mismatched, but not everybody matters so much about the color. The boxes themselves come in quite a few colors. I would say green, red, blue, and black are the most common. I think they're coming out with purple next, and there is a lot of other US General boxes we're not going to talk about here, being the carts probably. I don't want to mention them a lot, but I would say that probably is my favorite product that US General offers is the full bank flip top cart. I think that's probably the best value, even considering any brand outside of Tool Trucks or Harbor Freight. I think that's probably the best value if you're starting out looking for something that has a ton of storage and is not that expensive and also has a really high build quality. I think the US General carts are a higher build quality than the actual full-size boxes. The way that they feel, the way that the drawers feel, everything in them feels a little bit better. They have a really thick bumper around the edges that is rubber. If you look closely, if you guys have one, I don't have one here to show, but on the inside of a US General, they use more rollover, where here they're not using as much rollover. That just doubles the steel gauge basically when you have two pieces together. And they do that more around the corners. They do it a little bit here. That's why you see this. And the same with the snap-on. That's what the purpose of that is. You're just doubling up your steel integrity on the structural points. Snap-on on a box like this is going to be, on the Classic, is going to be like 16, 18 gauge, and then you think about doubling up your structural points. You're getting an extremely strong corner. It would be hard to dent this to the point it would significantly have an impact on the drawer itself. The walls of a US General are much thinner. They are still going to be a double wall. A double wall, if you guys don't know, means the way that the drawers interfaces, they're not actually attaching to the box itself. They're attaching to a secondary wall on the inside of the box. So this right here that these slides are attached to is different than this piece of metal. This metal and this metal out here are two separate pieces. And the reason that this is important is because you're getting, in the event that you hit the inside of your box right here, it gets banged in. You see it all the time. Boxes are regularly damaged. If you dent one of these in, the drawers will still work fine unless the dent is extremely severe, because you're not actually bending the metal that the slides are interfacing with. Back in the day, we did not have double wall construction on boxes like the old Craftsman series. We're going to mount directly to the wall, and they had a much heavier steel gauge. The steel gauge was very thick, but if you dented it at all, the drawers would bind, because if you just even slightly tweak the outside of the box, it would make the drawer bind when you try to open it. But these can take a pretty significant hit. You could smack it with the hammer and the drawers are all going to still work smooth. And that's going to be the same with most any toolbox today. It is just something to note. The drawers go back in easy when they're small, and when they are big, they're almost impossible. I think overall, it's a really good value. I don't want to say that it's not. And if I was in the market and starting out as a tech, or even a homeowner, or somebody that was looking for something to just hold my tools, and I really didn't care about the origin of the product, I didn't care where it was made, I didn't care about US labor, and I didn't care about the longevity of the product, because I didn't plan on abusing it, or I plan on upgrading out of it in time, I would buy one of these in a heartbeat. I think at the end of the day, if you're in a budget and you're thinking, I want to buy one in cash and I only have $1,000, I would go to the US General. Really, I would look for a used Snap-on Marketplace before I bought a US General, but that's just me personally, because you can buy a Snap-on for not that much more money. You know, a double bank Snap-on Classic, you can find sub $2,000 used. So I would rather pay an extra grand than have something that is probably double the quality. But a lot of people don't want to consider these options. A lot of people want to buy a new product. They want to go to Harbor Freight and pick one up. They want to get on the tool truck and purchase one. So if you're really not looking to buy a used box and you just want to go swipe a credit card and purchase a brand new toolbox, I would say US General is probably the best bet if you're going to be price conscientious. And also, I see a lot of young techs getting into Snap-on toolboxes and then leaving the industry well before there would have been any issues with the US General, and well before they had any tools to really justify having such a large box. So when you're starting out, maybe you get one of these and you use it for a couple years. I think I would like to see that more. It's really hard buying boxes off of techs. You know, they worked hard and they learned on the job. They're trying to figure things out, and they just found out this industry is not for them, and they're underwater on a toolbox that I can't even buy from them because they're too far underwater for me to even get them out of the payment. And now they're leaving the industry while carrying a $6,000 or $7,000 tool truck debt. That is really sad. It's probably one of the hardest parts of these jobs, is telling, you know, younger kids or young adults that they're completely screwed. They're not going to be able to walk away from the toolbox that they've been paying on for 2 years. Or at least with one of these, you know, if you bought one of these and used it, I've never seen a triple US General sell for less than $1,000. I'm sure there's instances where it has, or some of the older series have, but on a series 3, these boxes always sell for over $1,000, and even that's when they usually have a significant amount of wear. They usually still hold their value pretty well at that grand mark. So if you think you get, you're in $1,600, $1,700, $1,800 on one of them, you can always get out of it $1,000. You lose $800. If that's the loss that you take, I could live with it. It is really hard when you think about taking a loss of, this box right here has a list of 12. And then you have the bedline top on it, which is adding like another 15. So 13.5 is what you're looking at. Maybe your dealer cut you a hell of a deal and you're in at $8,000, but this box is gonna sell for below 4. So you're losing, $4,000, and that's a lot of money, especially if you're leaving the industry because you couldn't make enough money at it. Chances are walking away with negative $4,000 would be a massive life hit. So I do appreciate you guys watching. I wanna reiterate that I think all toolboxes are cool. I just don't spend as much time talking about these boxes. There are a lot of other brands that we get in. We talk about like Tecton and even Craftsman and Masterforce, and there's a lot of other toolbox brands out there. I really don't spend that much time delving into them just because they're not in the quantity that we see some of the other ones on, and I think the information is a little bit less crucial. I think when you're shopping for a Snap-on, we really try to mention some of the specifications and what you're actually buying, because you are taking on a lot of debt if you're purchasing one of these new. So I think it's a little bit more crucial with like what exactly are all the minutia of this box, where if you're looking at a box that's like $1,600, $1,700, I don't really think it quite matters as much. Like maybe the slides don't work as well. It's $1,700, $1,800. It's really not that big of a deal. You can always get out most of your money from it. But when you're talking about some of these bigger boxes, that is why I spend the amount of time trying to create some sort of education around them, because I want people to know exactly what you're buying, because at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to get out of it very easy. So you better be sure of the product that you're buying, and that's something that you want to own for many years, and not just impulse buying a product because it looks good on the truck or it looks good on the website. And also these boxes, when we talk about them, you cannot go in a store and look at them. And I think that's another reason I really don't spend as much time talking about the big box stores, because if you're in the market for a US General, you can just go to the nearest Harbor Freight and you can just look at one in person and open the drawers and see what one feels like. Where if you're wanting to buy a Snap-on, your dealer usually only has 1 or 2 on the truck. Some dealers have none, some dealers have 3, but never more than that. So if you're wanting to see one of these boxes, you just don't quite get the opportunity, especially with some of the more unique ones, like some of the 36-inch Epics. These are very rare to see on a truck. You see them in shops, but they're usually going to be custom ordered. So spending a bit more time talking about stuff like this makes sense in my mind, because I know that most people don't have the opportunity to actually look at one for themselves. So if we can provide as much detail about that product for them, I think it's more justifiable for my time. Where these, realistically, if you made it this far in the video and you're considering one of these, you could have just driven to Harbor Freight a lot quicker and looked at one in person. So there is that. But once again, I do appreciate you guys watching. All of these will be for sale. I'm not exactly sure what we'll sell them for. US Generals usually sell for around 70% of list used, which is a lot higher than most brands. So that's probably what we'll list them at. One other thing I would mention right at the end is the handle. The handle actually is good for the price. We have a Mac handle somewhere in my pile. This is like a Mac handle here, and this is a US General handle, and then the classic handle is going to be, if I have one around, we have them all. That's going to be an Epic handle with the chrome. That's going to be a classic handle. This here has 2 little pieces on the end, but that's a Mac handle, a Mac cart handle really. And then that's going to be the US General handle. It's actually probably a bit better than the classic series, in my opinion. It's got like a knurling to it. It just feels good. It feels strong. The classic is fine. I never see them fail, but honestly, the US General is a better design. It does look a lot more similar to what you're going to find on an Epic or even a Masters Snap-on. So for the last time, thank you guys for watching. I do appreciate you guys watching. I had to be careful. I will ramble about toolboxes all day. It is cool to have this many US Generals in here at one time, especially all matching. Even these, part of me wants to take home and just run up against a wall, but I have too many toolboxes as is. So until next time, thank you.